Is the Ford Maverick Hybrid actually good or just cheap engineering dressed up as a bargain truck? On paper, this thing almost looks like a glitch in the Matrix. A compact pickup, real usable bed, hybrid drivetrain, city fuel economy in the 40s, base prices that at launch were under $25K and even now sit way below most trucks and SUVs. People see that and go, no way, something has to be junk. Ford must have cut every corner possible to make this work. At the same time, a lot of actual owners are out there saying stuff like, I'm getting 42 mpg on my commute with a bed full of tools. It does everything I need and I barely buy gas. This is the first new vehicle that actually feels like a smart financial decision. So which is it? Did Ford just slap a hybrid system onto cheap hardware and hope for the best? Or is the Maverick Hybrid an example of real, sensible engineering for normal people? I'm GearHead. I don't care what's trending, what's on TikTok, or which brand you grew up with. I care about what's actually under the sheet metal, how it behaves at 100,000 miles, and whether it ruins or respects your bank account. If you want that level of understanding before you sign for something like a Maverick Hybrid, hit subscribe now because this is exactly the kind of car that can either be a genius move or an expensive experiment if you don't know what you're buying. Let's peel this thing apart. First big question, what is the Maverick Hybrid really under the skin? People call it a truck, and yes, it looks like a small truck. It has a bed, it has a tailgate, it's not pretending to be a car with a silly coupe SUV roofline. But structurally, it's not a mini F-150. It's not body on frame. It's a unibody vehicle built on Ford's C2 platform, the same basic architecture used for the Escape, Bronco Sport, and some other global Ford products. That's important. Ford didn't spend billions developing a dedicated pickup frame and unique suspension just for this one little truck. They reused a lot of the hard work they already did on a front-wheel drive crossover platform, stretched and adapted it, changed the back half into a bed, and tuned it for pickup duty. That sounds cheap because it is cost-efficient, but that doesn't automatically make it bad. In engineering, reusing a mature platform has some big advantages. A lot of the crash structure, crumple zones, and safety engineering are already tested. Suspension geometry, steering components, and basic handling behavior are known quantities. Production tooling already exists, supply chains already exist, parts catalogs already exist. And that matters for you because shared parts usually mean easier repairs and cheaper replacements. If your Maverick Hybrid shares struts, bushings, or control arms with an Escape, that's good news for parts pricing and availability. So yeah, it's a truck in form and function, but the bones are much closer to a Japanese-style ute or car-based pickup you see in global markets. You're getting a light-duty, lifestyle, or work hybrid, not a half-ton workhorse disguised as a compact truck. For a lot of buyers, that's exactly what they actually need. They just don't say it out loud because "I might need to tow a house someday" is usually fantasy than reality. Now let's talk about the hybrid drivetrain itself because that's where people get suspicious. Ford could have gone a few different ways. Tiny turbo engine trying to do everything, diesel, not happening in the US for this segment, or a properly thought out full hybrid. They went hybrid, and the recipe is this: a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder running an Atkinson-cycle, plus an electric motor, plus a hybrid transaxle, e-CVT style, plus a relatively modest-sized battery pack. If that general pattern reminds you of Toyota's hybrids, that's not an accident. Atkinson-cycle GE plus motor plus power split logic is just a really smart way to get efficiency in city and mixed driving. The 2.5-liter block in the Maverick Hybrid is part of Ford's family that's been used in Escape hybrid duty in recent years, and so far the reliability story is reasonably good. Not perfect, but there's no pattern of "these all blow up at 80,000 miles" or battery failures everywhere so far. In other words, Ford's hybrid system here is an untested science fair material. It's an evolution of tech they've already had out in the world. Where the Maverick Hybrid definitely is cheap is in the stuff you touch and see, the interior materials and some of the trim. You've got hard plastics on the doors and dash, you've got simple seat fabrics, you don't get a fancy multi-link rear suspension in the hybrid, you get a simpler torsion beam out back on FWD models. There's not a ton of soft touch anything unless you go up the trims or add options. For some people, that screams economy car with a bed. For others, that's just normal, a truck interior that you don't cry about when you scratch it. It's very clear where Ford chose to spend and where they chose to save. They spent money and complexity for giving you a hybrid powertrain that delivers legit fuel economy in a truck-shaped package. They saved money on interior feel and some suspension components so that the whole vehicle wouldn't blow past the price of a decently spec'd mid-size sedan. So, the question you have to ask is, would you rather have fancy dash stitching and an 18-speaker sound system, or an honest interior with a powertrain that saves you thousands in fuel over time? If you're looking at a Maverick hybrid seriously, odds are you're in that second group. You care more about function than image. So, how's it holding up in the real world so far? Fuel economy? Owners consistently report high 30s to low 40s in mixed driving if they're not driving like maniacs. City numbers often exceeding what the EPA suggests if you're smooth and let the hybrid system do its thing. Highway numbers dropping a bit, as expected, but still very respectable for anything with a bed. That's a huge deal if you're used to compact or mid-sized trucks getting mid-teens or low 20s mpg. Over tens of thousands of miles, that difference adds up. Performance and drive feel? The Maverick Hybrid is not a rocket ship, but it's not dangerously slow either. The electric motor's instant torque makes it feel punchier off the line than you'd expect from a 2.5-liter Atkinson-cycle engine. Around town, it feels normal in a good way. Merging, passing, and everyday traffic maneuvers are fine, especially if you understand that this is a small truck, not a drag car. The e-CVT behavior is something people either get used to or complain about. When you floor it, the engine revs up and kind of stays there while the speed catches up. It's like a Prius or other hybrids. If you're coming from a traditional geared automatic, that can feel weird for the first week. After that, most people either forget about it or appreciate the smooth gear change-free power.
It rides like what it is, a compact unibody truck based on a crossover. The front end is car-like. The rear torsion beam on FWD models is simple, durable, and a bit more basic in feel. Unloaded, it can feel a little light and bouncy over bad roads, like a lot of small pickups do. Loaded up with gear, mulch, or tools, it tends to calm down. It's not trying to be a sports truck. It's trying to be easy to live with in cities and suburbs and decent on the highway. On that score, it mostly succeeds. Capability. Here's where Ford clearly put guardrails in place. The Maverick Hybrid only comes as front-wheel drive. There's no AWD option with the hybrid system in the US market, as of now. Max tow rating is lower on the hybrid than on the EcoBoost Maverick. Think around 2,000 pounds versus 4,000 with the towing package on the turbo. Can it tow a small utility trailer, a couple of bikes, lawn equipment, a lightweight camper? Yes. Should you be dragging a heavy enclosed trailer across the Rockies with it? No, that's not what it's for. Payload in the bed is realistic for homeowner and light professional use. Think supplies, tools, appliances, dirt bikes, not a pallet of bricks every day for a decade. This is exactly where people get into trouble with it. They buy it because it's a truck, then get mad when it doesn't behave like an F-150 towing a car hauler. The hybrid's engine, cooling, transaxle, and front drive layout are sized and tuned for light to moderate duty, not constant max load. If you use it inside what it was designed for, the engineering makes sense. If you treat it like a half-ton workhorse, you're going to be disappointed and possibly abusive to the mechanicals. Now, reliability and long-term durability. This is the part everyone really wants to know. We don't have a decade of Maverick hybrid data yet, but we can look at patterns. The 2.5-liter hybrid system in Escape hybrid and related models has generally done all right. No widespread pattern of catastrophic failures at relatively low miles. Some early software teething issues, some odd transmission behaviors that got reflashed, but nothing like this entire platform is cursed. The battery pack is not enormous. That's good. Smaller pack, properly cooled and managed, generally has less thermal stress than an EV pack that's constantly fast charging and deep cycling. As long as Ford did a decent job on the thermal management and early signs don't suggest anything crazy, there's no obvious reason to think these packs will all die at 100K. The hybrid transaxle is simpler mechanically than a traditional planet-stacked automatic with 10 gears. That's in its favor. Fewer clutches, fewer valve bodies, more of the work happening electrically, less happening through friction materials. Where I'd watch closely as mileage piles up. Cooling system health. Hybrids hate being overheated. Radiators, pumps, thermostats, and coolant need to be taken seriously. Don't play "I'll skip this flush" roulette. Software updates. Hybrid control logic is complicated. When Ford pushes updates to fix odd behaviors, get them. front-wheel drive traction and CV joints in hard-working trucks. If you're constantly loading or towing at the upper limit, those CVs, mounts, and front diff components will see more stress. Rust in northern climates. It's unibody, with a bed and lots of crevices back there. Keeping the underbody clean and possibly applying extra protection will matter if you plan to keep it long-term. Is it as over-engineered and stress-tested as a Toyota hybrid? Probably not. Toyota is obsessive in that area. Ford's track record is more mixed, but so far, there's no giant red flag screaming, "This is cheap junk." It feels more like sensible hybrid tech on a shared, mature platform, wrapped in a deliberately cost-cut interior to hit a price point. So where does this land on the good versus cheap scale? If you define cheap engineering as cutting corners on critical long-term components, undersized cooling, unproven hybrid hardware, flimsy suspension, weak structure, the Maverick Hybrid is not that. Ford actually put the effort in where it counts for a daily driven, high-volume vehicle. If you define cheap engineering as they didn't give me BMW-grade soft-touch plastics and triple-pane glass, then yeah, it's cheap, on purpose. That's how they got you a hybrid truck that normal people can afford. The bigger question is, are you the right buyer for it? The Maverick Hybrid makes a ton of sense if you mostly drive in the city or suburbs, you want real truck bed utility without full-size truck pain, you don't tow at the max all the time, you actually care about fuel economy, you're okay with an interior that feels honest rather than premium, you're planning to service the hybrid system on schedule and not pretend it's maintenance-free. It makes less sense if you live somewhere with steep dirt roads and snow half the year and you really need AWD. You tow heavy or long distances frequently. You need a serious work truck that lives loaded and on job sites. You're super sensitive to interior material quality. You expect Toyota-level hybrid longevity, but don't have Toyota-level patience for early adopter hiccups. So, is the Ford Maverick Hybrid actually good? Used as intended, light truck duty, commuting, urban and suburban errands, and weekend projects, yes, it's one of the cleverest, most rational vehicles Ford has built in years. Treated like an F-150 Junior or judged like a Lexus, that's when people start calling it cheap. The truth is, the Maverick Hybrid is exactly what it looks like once you strip away the hype, a cost-optimized, decently engineered hybrid compact truck that gives a lot of people exactly what they actually need, if they're honest about how they live. If you're thinking seriously about buying one and want to go deeper, what to check on a used Maverick Hybrid, what early issues are showing up, and how to treat the hybrid system so it still feels good at $150,000, make sure you're subscribed. Because the difference between Maverick Hybrid was my smartest car move and this thing turned into a headache is going to come down to how well you understand what you're asking it to do. I'm GearHead. Every car has a story. And together, we're going to decode the ones that look too good to be true before they surprise you the expensive way.